Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, bringing you another video talking about survivability in Star Trek Online. And today I'm going to be going over the second part of my three-part series going over rock, paper, scissors in Star Trek Online. Today I'm going to be going over ground tanking builds, specifically going over tactical and science builds inside of the game. Now, I won't be going over engineering because that is actually a really complicated can of worms. I will be covering a lot of that next week, actually. There are three different ways to build engineering captains on the ground, and I'm not going to jib it by trying to force that into this video as well. In this video, I'll talk about general tanking and survivability inside of ground combat, and that will include a science and tactical build alongside that. Next week will be the engineering build stuff for ground combat. Those of you that are interested in that video, you can feel free to wait for next week to see that video. But let's go ahead and get into some of the ground stuff inside of the game. As normal, time links for all the stuff is going to be in the description. I'm not going to cover this slide in too much depth, but just to kind of like to point some things out to you all. Now, as to why ground combat is so much different and sometimes can be harder, is because in ground combat, your captain and bridge officers are all separate. They aren't together like in space, and so like if you group up with other captains, you can have like a bazillion other starships in your group with tons of other bridge officer abilities. In ground combat, if you get a captain, okay, they have an additional ability versus my bridge officer. That's great, I guess, and they avoid stuff more easily than my bridge officers will, but outside of that, grouping with another captain isn't really going to give you a ton of additional advantage inside of most of the story missions inside of the game, unlike your space battles will. Additionally, in ground combat, you don't have starship traits to help out with a lot of your survivability. Traits like Honored Dead, the new C-Store trait that just came out with the support ships, which I will be talking about on Sunday, alongside Shield Overload, are all very valuable starship traits that do not exist in ground combat at all. Alongside that, between space and ground, the only big difference here is that in space you have between 11 and 12 consoles, 12 if you are in a Miracle Worker ship, versus ground, of which you have 5 to 6 kit modules. You could potentially have a 6th if you have a specific kit frame, which can act as a 6th kit module. But still, you still have about half of the consoles that you would have versus space in ground combat. And so it can be a bit harder to navigate through a lot of ground combat stuff inside of the game. So for this basic stuff, what I'm going to talk about first is kit frames, because this can be the most complicated and easiest place to mess up when you're making a ground build. First off, for modifiers, kit performance is the number one kit frame modifier for every class inside of the game. This affects all of your activatables that you have inside of ground combat, so you want this as high as possible. As a survivability person, if you're wanting to tank in ground combat, you're going to want some personal shield hardness, as well as some additional damage resistance rating coming from your kit frame as well. Kit readiness is also pretty nice too for your DPS captains. Hit points, personal shield generator, and willpower are okay. This weapon stuff right here is only good if you're going to be a DPS ground tactical captain. If you're not one of those inside the game, you shouldn't be getting these modifiers ideally for your captain, for your kit frames. However, above all that, do not get the regen modifier at all on your kit frame. I know that I've been saying that health regeneration is super nice. It's nice to have a lot of that in combat, but this health regen modifier for your kit frame actually references a specific type of health regen in your ground skill tree. That is health regen that only works outside of combat. It's a health regen that doesn't work inside of combat, and so this kit frame modifier right here is actually going to be hurting you and whenever you're actually inside of combat. It's literally, I can basically guarantee you it is the worst modifier in the entire game. Do not have it. For budget kit frames, the best two, well, the only two that you can get from missions is the Counter Command kit frame for surface tension. It's much more of a tank type of frame. And the Romulan Imperial Navy kit frame is much more of a tactical kit frame if you're going to be a plasma dealing ground tactical captain. Otherwise, there are other kit frames that are just better. For the high-end stuff, the ones that I highly recommend, if you're a science captain or an engineering captain, I highly recommend getting the Terran Empire kit frame. You don't need epic rarity for this. Just a regular drop of very rare is perfectly fine. The control duration thing that you inherently get on this gives you an additional 20% duration of all control effects that you put out. So stuns, roots, slows, weapon disables, placates, all those different types of things, their duration will be increased by 20% with just that control duration thing there. It is exceptionally strong for science and engineering. Not that great for tactical, but there are a few things that tactical can do to have control stuff. Mostly it's science and engineers that'll be able to do that a lot more. For tactical, the route that I would veer towards is the Fleet Versatile Kit Frame. You get this from the Fleet Research Lab as available in Tier 1. And what this Fleet Versatile Kit Frame allows you to do is to get a kit module that regularly would not be available to your specific profession. So for instance, for tactical, there are two different kit modules available to you, two from science as well as two from engineering that you can pick for your kit frame that you can put on your character. The best one for you is going to be the healing version from science, the vascular regenerator. And I mean, if you're an engineering captain and don't like the control stuff or don't have much control in your kit modules, then the vascular regenerator for engineering is also pretty good too. This isn't quite as good for science because science is already extremely well-rounded in ground combat. The only thing that could really enhance them further, really, is to have the shield recharge version for them to get some additional shield healing to enhance and make their medical vanguard trait even stronger than it already is inside of ground combat. For budget stuff, so as you're starting to level up inside of the game, the armor that I highly recommend getting is the polyalloy weave armor. If you're an engineer or a science captain, this is the go-to armor to get whenever you're choosing different armors, whenever you're leveling up. If you're a DPS weapon captain, recoil compensating is perfectly fine. If you're a DPS melee captain, then the physical augmentation one is fine as well. The biggest modifiers you're looking for when you're leveling up is regen. HP is by far the biggest one. Having additional health, more res all stuff to it is also nice as well, but regen HP is by far the best one. As for your weapons, the best ones as you're leveling up, because as you're leveling up you might not know the game as well. The best ones is for your rifles, split beam and pulse wave ones are better because you're able to hit multiple enemies at once. For pistols, the white arc pistol is the best one there. In my last ground video that I released a long time ago, I showed you how to get a free white arc pistol through your TOS captain. And for melee, I highly recommend a sword, just because with swords, you're able to get your melee combos out the fastest, and so you're able to get a lot of like your crits and exposes out faster, and you're able to like knock down a lot faster than with any of the other weapons inside of the game. When it comes to shields anyway, there aren't any like super specific shields. Instead, you're looking at the modifiers to determine like what type of shield it's actually going to be. These top three are technically the best ones, but they're on very specific shields inside of the game. The just plain regen is the best regular modifier. This is actually also an additional regeneration for your shields. The Resol here for additional damage resistance is also pretty nice as well. Outside of that, they're kind of like meh in terms of modifiers, but they can be situationally okay as well. Now for the armor and shields that you can get and earn from missions, the earliest one for armor is going to be the Jem'Hadar armor. You get this from of Bajor, and it gives you some solid health and shield regeneration. The best budget armor though is the Romulan Imperial Navy Combat Armor. You get this from Uneasy Allies, and it gives you very high health regeneration. There are very few armors that actually have higher health regeneration than this one. as well as a very high amount of damage resistance rating on the actual armor itself. It's a very nice, even just one-piece armor. Now, when it comes to environmental suits, the best one is going to be the Solnay ones from the mission A Step Between Stars. And this is actually a suit that you get partway through the mission. So that means what you can actually do is you can play the mission partway through, get the mission, and then you can leave it, and you can actually stop the mission, and you can even like restart the mission if you want more environmental suits. You don't have to finish the whole mission to get the suit. There also is a lobby store variant that if you combine 3 of them together with 50 lobby, you can get a really strong one. The black version looks super cool from the lobby store, but a lot of that's just more for looks. It's not really for survivability. When it comes to shields, the best early shield in the game is the phase-shifted personal shield from the skirmish mission. I don't know how much this is going to be modified in the new Age of Discovery stuff. I know that the Davidian arc is going to be not even in the mission journal anymore in Age of Discovery. So who knows, they might just keep all the missions there, and then you just get to choose from there if you really want to do them. But this one you're able to access very early on, and it gives you a decent amount of shield regen, plus it gives one of the highest psionic damage resistances of any shield or armor inside of the entire game. You really have to get the Iconian reputation, not Iconian, the Undine reputation armor and shields to be comparable to this, or to craft your own shield and armor to have a lot of really high psionic damage resistance on it. A little bit better one, as you get later on inside the game, is going to be the Ramen Imperial Navy personal shield, also from the Uneasy Allies mission. You really should be running this mission. You probably should run this mission a bunch of times to get the Ramen Imperial Navy combat armor and Ramen Imperial Navy personal shield on all of your bridge officers. That is my recommendation personally, to get this armor and this shield on all of your bridge officers. There are better ones obviously for your bridge officers, but you just run this mission a lot of times and you get a very solid armor and shield actually. Nice thing about this shield is that you inherently get 20% shield resist on it, plus you're able to deal additional weapon damage whenever you're hit. Well, a chance for additional weapon damage whenever you're hit, and that'll last a few seconds. This is a very strong mid-level shield. For a lot of your super budget end and like if you're just struggling to play the game on normal difficulty on ground missions, the Cool Temporal Optic Personal Shield is a much better shield for you. You get this from the Temporal Front mission, and it's because of the time slip ability that makes this a very strong survival shield. There are a lot of DPS tactical ground captains with weapons that they will use this shield still at the high end, not for the actual proc or anything, but because if you have this shield combined with the weapon on it, you're able to get an additional 2% crit chance and 30% crit severity with it. And that's why you'll see this shield a lot in a lot of ground builds. It's just because of that 2-piece set. If you don't care about mission ones at all, then I would recommend going with just the Elite Fleet Adaptive Personal Shield from the Fleet Starbase. And I would go with the Cap 2 Regen Shield and Adapt variant of this particular shield. That one gives the best survivability for your buck from the fleet. Alright, so with all that said, let's get into my 2 ground tanking builds inside of the game. And this first one's going to be Science. So for this, I did modify this slide a little bit from Sunday. On the right is just the remaining Science powers for ground. On the left, you can see that like the biggest strengths for Science is that you have Medical Tricorder, which combined with Medical Vanguard makes you extremely durable, and you're extremely versatile in that you're able to be a healer, a tank, or a DPS guy on the ground. And you deal damage through your kit modules. The basics for this build anyway is the Medical Tricorder plus Medical Vanguard. The premise that I have anyway, and what I've been doing has been working insanely well actually, is Medical Vanguard gives you a timeout shield regen, which is really negligible. The bigger thing is that it gives you a 50% shield resistance for that 4 seconds, plus it gives you perfect shields. Medical Vanguard activates every single time that you activate a heal, either on yourself or on an ally. The Medical Vanguard is on whoever is getting the heal. You combine this with the fact that Medical Tricorder has a 6-second base cooldown, and then when you have a lot of cooldown stuff through the Temporal Optic specialization and and a particular reputation trait, you can get this down to almost 4 seconds. Very, very close to 4 seconds. And so literally just with your spammy medical strike order as a tank, you can quite literally keep yourself up with perfect shields and insane shield resistance virtually throughout your entire fight. And so everything in my science tank builds can be built around this little theory. So for kit modules, I'm going to have craftable and or fleet versions and reputation ones over here, and then the specialization and lockbox versions over here on the right. So obviously medical strike order with the medical vanguard trait is extremely strong. The exothermic induction field is the biggest and easiest form of damage for science captains. It does a very good amount of AoE damage as well as threat inside of the game. I had so many problems leveling up Klingon characters with Klingon enemies just jumping off the edge to their death. But anyway, there also is a nano-health monitor and vascular regenerator, which are pretty strong as heals. And hyperonic radiation is a nice radiation AoE damage. When it comes to these better consoles, a lot of your high-end science DPS ground builds are going to have this triple combination. It's going to be Cold Fusion Flash combined with Paradox Bomb, and then exothermic induction field immediately on top of all of that. So that enemies are basically stuck, pulled in, and remain in your exothermic induction field for the full duration. So you do a ton of damage really quickly. I agree that that's a very strong, potentially the best triple combo for damage inside the game, for at least for science anyway. For tactical, you have a couple of you activate 4 abilities at once. You can easily one-shot almost anything in the game too. But the combo that I like a little bit better is Cold Fusion Flash plus Seismic Agitation Field plus Exothermic Induction Field. The reason why is because Paradox Bomb has a significantly longer cooldown than Cold Fusion Flash and Exothermic Induction Field. However, Seismic Agitation Field does a lot of the similar things that Paradox Bomb does more damage, and has the exact same cooldown as Cold Fusion Flash and Exothermic Induction Field. As thus, I'm able to use this triple combo, and I literally don't have to look at the cooldown of Paradox Bomb to worry about, alright, can I do the combo again? I'll be like, oh, well, it's Cold Fusion Flash off cooldown. Cool, then I can do my combo again. I also like the Sonic Disruption kit module, just because it's a guaranteed interrupt and stun. The normal version, in the normal craftable stuff over here for science, it's a chance for an interrupt and stun and knockback. Sonic Disruption is a guaranteed interrupt, stun, and knockback. So this is it's significantly more valuable. So as we get into my actual science build itself, keep in mind for the colors, because I am red deficient myself for colors and everything, the very rare stuff in here is going to be in blue, the ultra rare will be in purple, and epic is going to be in yellow. Just because I actually can't tell the difference between very rare and ultra rare inside of the game. I actually have to hover over the thing like, is that very rare or is that ultra rare? But anyway, for the kit modules, I obviously am going to have the Terran Empire Science Kit frame. And for the modifiers, of course, I have control duration, which is embedded in it, along with kit performance, PSG res, and armor. And then this KP weapon you get when you upgrade this to epic. I really wish I could re-roll this to have it be kit performance and then something else other than weapon, because weapon is meaningless for a science captain. But well, weapon's okay, I guess. It's better than regen. And this is for the additional 20% duration on control abilities. Medical Tricorder for the synergy with Medical Vanguard. And then the triple combo of Cold Fusion Flash, Seismic Agitation Field, and Exothermic Induction Field. I also have Sonic Disruption for that interrupt, stun, and knockback. For the ground build, because I don't have to worry about Borg adaptation, because this is where my damage is coming from, and the Borg cannot adapt to this type of damage, I'm freely able to choose two-piece sets for ground. And the ones that I wanted to veer towards was the Lucari version, because the Lucari weapon actually has the piezo proc, just like the piezo polar ion weapons in space. The piezo wrist apparatus also gives you a piezo proc if you go to the healing mode, and also the secondary fire in the healing mode does an AoE heal too. The 2-piece bonus also gives me an additional 25% ongoing whole healing just in case, one of my allies is being super stupid inside of a ground combat, that I can easily help and keep them alive. The current armor is also nice in that it gives you passive health regen, which is what you're looking for all of your armors. Whatever armor that I'm showing you in these videos, it's always going to have health regen on the armor itself. The shield and the other shield weapon combo that I have is the Zenkethi one from the lobby store. It does cost lobby, but it's only 50 lobby each. It's not like the other lobby consoles that I've been showing in previous videos for a lot of the higher end stuff that's like, alright, here's 200 to 300 lobby for this weapon or this console. No, this is only 50 lobby each. So it's quite a bit less expensive. I certainly wish that a lot of stuff in the lobby store would be available on the exchange, but whatever. I have this mainly for the 2-piece bonus. It gives me a little additional shield resist, which covers up the weaknesses that the Zenkethi shield has. Additionally, the 2-piece bonus also gives me an additional 25 kit performance, which increases the damage and effectiveness of my other kit modules that I have. Additionally, alongside the weird Zenkethi personal shield thing that you get whenever you're at really low shields, that you get a significant amount of temporary resistance to your rear, because Zenkethi have that weird shield stuff in the back. This shield also has a passive 25% radiation damage amp to all of your kit modules and stuff. I used to run a radiation damage kit module over here. I just feel that this build works a little bit better than my other one, so that's what I'm using currently. Now, whenever you're going into a really hostile environment situation and you need an environmental suit, this is what I would recommend personally. The Nukara Strike Force Elite Environmental Suit is the best tanky environmental suit in the entire game. There are 3 different environmental suits from the Nukara reputation, so pay attention as to which one that you are picking. One of them is great for DPS, one of them is garbage, and this one is insanely good for tanking. You lose a 2-piece Nukara outgoing healing bonus on it, but well, just the way it is whenever you're having to use environmental suits. For ground traits, this is what I'm using, as well as specializations and reputation. You can feel free to look at all this. The top 3 over there, you're able to you inherently have with science captains. There's nothing to worry about there with like species and things. I additionally have Serenity, Iron Sights, and Regenerative Tissue for additional passive health regeneration, alongside additional kit performance and additional healing received. So when I'm spamming Medical Strike Order on myself, I'm getting an additional amplification to healing. Alongside that, Savior gives me a lot of additional bonus healing as well, and additional healing to myself if I decide to heal someone else. Savior is almost a must-have if you're going to be a healing captain. But yeah, Maki Gao is also pretty nice in that it gives me an amplification on my controls. But there's also additionally that the space version doesn't have is that it gives me an additional 10% run speed, which is pretty nice too. Lastly, I have Invigorating Radiation for an additional heal and removal of radiation debuffs whenever I'm hit with something like that once every 30 seconds. Specializations for science is pretty straightforward. Miracle Worker primary, Temporal Optimist secondary. As I experimented more and more with different things, this is basically the one that you should be using as a science captain. For reputation, I have Mage Race Chrono Capacitor, Strength of Body for additional kit performance and kit module recharge speed. This kit performance is only on captain abilities though, so it's not for everyone. The reactive Proto Iron Infusion is extremely strong against a lot of the crits that you'll constantly be getting inside of ground combat. And then Indomitable gives me an additional 10% health. And then lastly, for the actual ground skills, this section right here is the out combat only regen that's available in the ground skill tree. Do not ever invest points in this section right here. It's just garbage. Like, you should ideally be like, investing stuff in like a ground space skill tree to help you in combat. This doesn't help you in combat, so there's no point. And then besides that, there's 18 points left, or 18 things that you can click, and there's 10 you're able to put in there. So when it comes down to it for science, your damage should be coming from kit modules. That's where a lot of your stuff lies. That's where your strength is. You should be leaning in towards that. So you shouldn't be investing points in the weapons over there, which you take those 8 points of 10 optionals out, and then you have 12 things left and 10 things to choose from that. So you obviously want to improve your DPS and your healing so you actually can tank. You want to cover up and make your shield as high as possible and have improved resistances, just so that your medical vanguard and your spamming of medical strike order becomes even more effective for tanking. You obviously want more health, but it's really your choice. And then this last part, whether you want additional damage resistance rating or kit cooldowns. For me, because science already is in temporal operative, getting lots of cooldowns anyway, the kit cooldowns isn't quite as important as having additional damage resistance rating for ground combat. Especially because the armor that I chose for my science captain doesn't have a ton of resistance on it, unlike a lot of other reputation armors inside the game. So so for my science captain, I veered much closer towards the damage resistance rating side instead of the kit cooldown side of things. Okay, so let's go into tactical ground tanking now. Tactical ground tanking has a very different philosophy versus science. Instead of having to spam super constantly to have something up, tactical is very much on the threat generation side already. So the question is, how can I have the most threat generation possible so that I can focus most of my stuff on just staying alive? And the answer is to use these two kit modules combined. Draw fire and suppressing fire, because of how scaling works inside of the game right now. If you get them to ultra rare Mark 15, their duration and their cooldown are basically the exact same. Now, if you have like cooldown reduction stuff on your captain, you don't have to have it at ultra rare Mark 15. You can have them very easily at a very rare Mark 12 for both of these and have the same duration as cooldown to be just fine. The big things here is that alongside the basic that you can have these on constantly, the Draw Fire Kit module has an insane amount of threat generation. I've said in previous videos that, you know, like in space, I was like, yeah, with all these different things of threat generation, like, that I have potentially, if you're inside of my radius, I have like 1,600 threat generation in space. If you're inside of the command attract fire radius, otherwise I have 800 threat generation, and that's pretty high. This is 2,800 threat generation at ultra rare. This isn't just high. This is high, basically to the point of I now don't have to worry about doing any sort of damage whatsoever. I have as long as I have a somewhat competent ground weapon and I fire at the enemy is going to be targeting me instead of you. That's just what it comes down to. Tactical has the utmost advantage when it comes to threat generation. If Tactical wants to be a tank, Tactical will be a tank, and Tactical will get the most threat generation of anyone in the entire group. Basically, the only way for someone to basically out-threaten my build, to put it simply, they'd have to do 28 times the damage of me. 28 times the damage of me. Keep in mind, like, my damage is not shabby. It's typically over 200, around 200 to 300 damage per second on average for my tactical captain. 28 times that? If you're doing that much damage, the enemy's already dead. So you don't have to worry about tanking. Very few things inside the game it's not really going to be an issue at all. Combine that with suppressing fire, which as you're attacking an enemy, they do significantly less damage to you, and their damage resistance rating is lowered as well. Combine these two things together, and they're able to tank a whole lot of damage, and they don't get a lot of damage back in return. Here's the kit modules themselves. Draw Fire and Suppressive Fire are definitely the must-haves for a tactical ground tank. Rally Cry is the only other really good tactical other one left, just because basically everything else for tactical for kit modules lets you deal more damage in some fashion. And with these two things, you don't have to deal more damage. You'll last through most stuff inside of ground combat. The only couple ones I thought might be okay is the torpedo launchers from the Reputations at Tier 3, but those are a bit inferior to Graviton Spike actually. I'd go with Graviton Spike before I'd go with these two things. But for the better high-end stuff, Phasic Shroud is insanely good. By the way, Phasic Shroud, as well as these two command specialization ones, can be used by any captain. Just so you know. Just that most tactical stuff deals with damage, and you don't need a lot of damage as a tactical captain. So, Phasic Shroud gives you a lot of temporary hit points and an insane amount of dodge and stealth to get out of dodge if you are in a very tough situation. You have nothing else left to survive. Return Fire is pretty good in those situations too, because you get a large amount of damage and kick cooldowns whenever you're at lower hit points for your captain, so that you can get your different heals that you have left on your kit back up to be able to survive and get your health back up and keep on going inside the battle. Biotech Siphon is an alternative to suppressing fire if you want to be a melee captain. This is only up about half the time, but when it's up, you're able to basically heal for almost 100% of your melee damage whenever this thing is up. So being a melee captain as a tactical officer is actually quite viable inside of ground combat, even at elite difficulty. But you'll have to invest a lot more in doing damage versus doing threat generation in order to be able to use this one effectively. Take Cover is also a pretty nice one. It gives you a team improved crouch, in which, like, as you're crouching, you get additional hit points per second. This is extremely nice, especially in PvP. If you combine this with the commando specialization with its improved crouch in that specialization, you get a stupidly high amount of health regeneration per second if you combine those two things together. If you're a super competitive PvP player, you're probably going to see Take Cover quite often. Just throwing that out there for you all. Here is my actual tactical build that I use for my tactical Romulan captain. She is a Klingon aligned captain, so keep that in mind. I use the Fleet Versatile Tactical Kit frame with a Vascular Regenerator modifier on it, so I can get an additional heal inside of my build. Draw Fire and Suppressing Fire is at Ultra Rare Mark 15. As I said before, that's the best way for those. I unfortunately only have Return Fire and Take Cover at rank 1 because this captain is extremely neglected overall inside of the game, and my command specialization has barely any points in it, just barely enough to even get these things in the first place. So they're only rank 1. They'll eventually be at rank 4, but right now they're only at rank 1. I also have Phasic Shroud for additional temporary hit points, dodge, and stealth. This is still a very valuable survival console, also a very strong one for PvP as well. For my ground build, I use the Klingon Honor Guard 3-piece set, because the 3-piece set is still pretty valuable. I actually don't use the Pulse Wave Rifle for damage though. I actually use the Zephyrin Shotgun instead, because all this stuff is pretty valuable. The armor is a health regen armor that gives me a lot of resistances as well alongside this health regen. So this armor by itself is very strong. For the personal shield, it's an okay shield, but the 2-piece bonus that you get is the Adrenal Booster, which is a heal, and it's also an escape from stuns and holds. So if you activate this Adrenal Booster, if you're stunned or held by some sort of ability, whether from enemies or if it's PvP, other players, you can use Adrenal Booster and get out of that stun or out of that hold. And then for the Pulse Wave Rifle, why I also have this. Sure, the integral frequency modulator is fine. I don't use this rifle though. I like the 3-piece though, because this is synergistic with tanks. And that I'm able to deal more damage as I'm attacked and take more damage from enemies. Literally, this set is built with tanking in mind. Quite literally, this is built with tanking in mind. So this set is extremely awesome. And then I use the Zephyrin Cochrane Shotgun just because that works for all enemies inside of the game. When I'm in an environmental situation, I, of course, will use the Nukara Strike Force suit because it's still the best environmental suit for tanking inside the game. I do lose the 3-piece bonus with the Klingon Honor Guard, but there's no real way to avoid it. So that's just kind of the way it is. If you're a Federation captain, this is the alternative to use. It would be the adapted Mako version of the armor, shield, and rifle. However, to get the adapted Mako, you first need to get your Omega reputation to tier 5. You need to make all 3 parts of the normal Mako armor. So you have to actually craft the Mako armor, the Mako shield, and the Mako rifle. Then you will have the adapted Mako armor available to make as well inside of the Omega reputation. At that point, then you can actually make the adapted Mako armor, shield, and pulse wave rifle, and get this stuff there too. However, since Omega reputation is the one that is queued up the most of all of them and has a lot of the easier missions and gives a lot of good rewards for those missions, it really is not going to take you that long to actually get all of the stuff that you need to be able to get this set, even if you're on the Federation side. When it comes to ground traits in general, these are the ones that I suggest using. Keep in mind that all these builds that I'm using for ground combat, this is with me as a Romulan captain. So some of these traits may not be available to you with your specific species. I don't really know. I haven't experimented with a ton of species to see the differences. But yeah, that's just a warning for you all. The top 4 ones here are available to me just right off the bat, just as part of my species. I also have the Ironsides, Regenerative Tissue, and Serenity for additional health regeneration. Kit performance is pretty nice as well. This health healing received, it's still valuable as well because I have several heals inside of my tactical build. The new one here that you haven't seen, the other one is called Blissful Agony, and that it gives me resistances to control when I'm hit with control effects, and I get some additional HP percentage per second. This is the ground version of a space trait that I've shown you before called Secret Command Codes. That one's a very strong PvP space trait, and this one's also a very strong ground trait as well. I also, of course, at the very end, also have Invigorating Radiation, just so I can remove radiation debuffs once every 30 seconds and get a slight small heal off of that too. Specializations is Miracle Worker Command. That's the best overall 2 specializations for space and ground for tanking with engineers as well as tactical officers inside the game. Science officers want Temper Operative instead of command, but Miracle Worker is basically the go-to one now for tanking. For reputation, the ones that I use for this tactical officer is Energizing Nanites. Because I'm doing lots of damage with my weapons, having a healing proc on those is pretty nice. Matrix Chrono Capacitor to allow my kits to recharge faster so I can get my heals off more quickly because my heals actually have a decent cooldown. Reactive Protomatter Infusion to give more healing and shielding regen when I'm critically hit, because that happens quite a bit inside ground combat as well as space. And then getting additional shield resistance because unlike Science, Tactical doesn't have a lot of shield resistance innately in their builds and stuff. So getting some additional shield resistance is pretty nice as well. And lastly, for Tactical will be the skills. Obviously, like normal, just like the Science, do not have the out combat only regen stuff slotted. If you do right now, wait until next season with Age of Discovery. Get one of your reputations at tier 6, and then use one of your free respects for your character, and make sure that none of your traits or skill points are in this out combat only regen, because this is completely garbage. Alright, so because of how high Drop Fire is in terms of threat generation, you don't need to actually invest any damage into this. You definitely can, and your threat generation will be amplified even further, but you don't have to. Instead, you can just amplify your kit effectiveness to have better threat and damage resistance rating off of your kits themselves. Increase your shields and your shield resistance to be able to survive much longer before the enemies get to your health. Because unlike Science, they will get your health fairly easily in ground combat in the elite operations inside the game. And of course, this is still the debate here as to whether you want damage resistance rating or kit cooldowns. Now, my argument here is that because your drop fire kit module already gives you about as much damage resistance rating as a regular armor would inside of the game, and since you're still going to wear an armor, you will already have a very large amount of damage resistance rating innately on your character. As thus, investing in kit cooldowns can be much more effective for you. And so there is my general build for tactical. Next week, I'll be going over engineering ground builds, all three of them that I consider the viable ones inside the game: the fabrication method, the disabler method, and the pseudo tank method, at least the categories that I call them anyway. And here's general recaps for rock, paper, scissors in terms of how they relate to ground combat. The engineering stuff I will be covering next week. For tactical, you are the weapon damage dealer. You're very strong versus science and very weak versus engineering. For science, you deal in kit module damage and healing. Very strong versus engineering and very weak versus tactical. For engineering, you do fabrications, mines, and disables inside of the game. Very effective versus tactical, very weak versus science. So yeah, that's basically it for rock, paper, scissors for this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Hopefully, for those of you that haven't really experienced much of ground combat, found this video helpful for you. And yeah, feel free to give me some comments as to things that you would like improved inside of these videos. The reason why I did a PowerPoint for this video is just because with all the different things I need to talk about in this video, I felt that to convey the information, it would be easier to do a PowerPoint. But yeah, this Sunday I'll talk more about Age of Discovery and things coming up, things that Cryptic has changed from what they said in Star Trek Las Vegas, and then just go from there. Thank you all for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.